tomatoes occasionally. And this is only a small sampling of the types of irrigated conditions that we see in the state. So of course, when we look either both from year to year and from variety to from location to location, we do see a lot of differences in how varieties perform. And it's difficult to peg them down, but I'm going to do the best I can, and then also try as much as possible to include some other information that's a little bit more stable from year to year and from environment to environment. All right, so starting out, we have bobtail first. This is a nice OSU release. Great disease package on this. Almost no stripe rust this year. We actually saw, I think, our first stripe rust lesion on bobtail, but it was tiny and nothing to worry about for the time being. It's performed pretty well at our irrigated areas, especially in the LeGrand and the Madras locations. Big downside of bobtail, which I think limited from or prevented it from getting much more acreage than it currently has, is it does have low test weight. It's typically one of the lowest in the trial. All right, Rosalind's another nice variety. This one's done really well in Hermiston and fairly well in our other irrigated locations. Like bobtail, this one has a really nice disease package. Stripe rust doesn't quite hold up to where bobtail is, and actually in the Willamette Valley, we're starting to see some heavier stripe rust pressure on Rosalind, which is making us concerned that the disease package is really breaking down here. So hopefully that doesn't spread eastward. But it does have great resistance to strawbreaker foot rot, other pathogens in general. Like bobtail, this one also has very low test weight, so that's going to be something to be aware of, and that you might get deductions if Rosalind's what you're growing. Next, Norwest Tandem. So this is a nice, I think of this as a well-rounded variety where it performs very well in a lot of locations around the state, especially the dryland areas though. Irrigated areas, I expect that there's other varieties that will typically perform better than Norwest Tandem. The two factors that Norwest Tandem does have that other varieties typically, or that not all varieties do have, is it's got great stripe rust resistance, and it's quite a bit shorter stature, which might help with lodging. All right, moving on to some Lima grain lines. Up first, we've got LCS Art Deco. This is some nice acreage in Oregon for good reason. It's got a great yield potential. Downsides of it are some winter tenderness. So that might be a factor if you're considering growing it in some of the higher elevation areas like LeGrand, Madras, Klamath Falls. Also not the best disease package. Not as bad as stripe rust as Mary, Brawl, some of those other ones that are extremely susceptible. But you definitely need to control the stripe rust. And typically with all the other pathogens that Chris Munt and the pathology program on campus screens for, LCS Art Deco is a little bit worse than average of the trial. Yield-wise, it does fairly well. At this point, I don't know if it's the top yielding variety in the irrigated or for an irrigated grower anymore, but it's typically one of the top in the trial still. LCS Drive, this is very similar to Norwest Tandem, and I'll mention Norwest Tandem is a Lima grain OSU collaboration, and then LCS Drive is a Lima grain variety. So LCS Drive does very well in those short or low rainfall environments, has a decent general performance statewide. In the irrigated areas, it's done well in the Hermiston site, but not as well in some of our other irrigated locations. But it does have those same two benefits as Tandem, where it's shorter and it has a good disease package. So those might be reasons you might be drawn to it in an irrigated area. LCS Shark, this is an Art Deco cross, and you can see a little bit of that bright green color come through. LCS Shark has a better stripe rust package than Art Deco does. And then the big thing that Shark has that Art Deco does not is resistance to soil-borne wheat mosaic virus. And I know that there's a little bit of that in the Hermiston irrigated area. So if that's a disease you're working with, LCS Shark should definitely be at or near the top of the list. Up next is LCS Blackjack. This is a very good variety. It is a cross between Rosalind and Bobtail. It was able to maintain a lot of the good disease resistance factors coming from the two parents, and seems to pretty consistently out-yield either the parents in these irrigated, and same thing goes with high rainfall and intermediate rainfall environments. Downside of LCS Blackjack is Bobtail has low test weight, Roslyn has low test weight, Blackjack also got low test weight. So that's the one thing that you likely expect a deduction in a lot of years due to low test weight if you're growing LCS Blackjack. Again, almost more than any other variety, this has stayed near the top of the irrigated variety trial locations. LCS Blackjack is a very new variety. This year it sounds like there's a little bit of certified seed to experiment with, but I expect that next year is when we'll start to see more certified seed available. All right, LCS Hulk. I'm not as familiar with this one since it's really more focused on the irrigated locations. Hasn't done great at the irrigated locations yield-wise, but it has had a fairly consistent performance. I was looking at our Hermiston data from this year, and we did see a lot of lodging at our Hermiston site. And I did notice that LCS Hulk was one of the only varieties that really wouldn't lodge. So not saying it won't lodge, especially if you get certain agronomic or disease factors, but I do have a little bit more confidence that Hulk will stay upright than some of the other varieties. Seems like it's got good stripe press package. I have heard a couple growers that are very happy with this one. So it could be one to keep on the radar. All right, SY Dayton. This one's actually done really well on the LaGrange site and decent at our other sites. Like LCS Shark, this one has resistance to soil-borne wheat mosaic virus. So if that's a pathogen you're working with, then again, SY Dayton should move to the top of the list, or at least close to the top of the list of varieties to consider. SY Dayton has better stripe rust resistance than SY Ovation. It's seen partially as a replacement for SY Ovation in some environments, and seems to really be focused at that really Walla Walla and of course Dayton, and then over in LaGrange are the sites where it really seems to thrive most. All right, SY Raptor. This one is a Syngenta variety. Again, a little bit off my radar, but targeted at those irrigated and higher production environments. This one has, again, improved stripe press resistance over Ovation, but not perfect. And it seems to have a fairly better than, or pretty consistently better than average performance at our irrigated sites. We haven't seen it at the very top of the list very much, but it does seem to have a nice yield in general in those environments. All right, and then the final non-clear field soft white is Impress. We only have 3 years of data on this, so still learning about it. It's done really well at our Hermiston irrigated site and has had, I'd say, a moderate performance at our other locations where it tends to be about middle of the pack. Like some of those other generalist varieties, this one really doesn't seem to have a whole lot of weaknesses. It seems to have good test weight, good disease package. I haven't found any specific environments that you really want to avoid growing Impress in. That being said, there has only been a handful of environments where it's really moved to the top of the variety trial reports, Hermiston and Walla Walla being the chief ones among those. All right, I don't know how many of you are going to be growing 2-gene clear fields. Of course, Magic is the most grown 2-gene clear field in Oregon right now. But just really quick, the one 2-gene clear field that's performed pretty well in irrigated environments is Stingray. And most of our irrigated environments, this one's really had a strong performance, almost matching some of the non-clear field varieties. It's got a good stripe press package and has yielded well in a lot of different environments. And there will be a decent amount of certified seed of this available this fall. It's a newer variety again. LCS Jet. So moving on to some hard reds here. LCS Jet in the irrigated areas is going to be the most commonly grown one at this point. It's got a great yield potential. Similar to, I believe, Art Deco, LCS Jet has won a couple yield competitions, I believe. Stripe rust resistance did not do very well this year. It was one that really got hit hard. And so that's going to be something that we want to keep an eye on with LCS Jet. But both because of its good solid acreage in the state and because it's really consistently performed well in our variety trials, for now, LCS Jet's really the one to beat. LCS Rocket. So this is a newer release from Lima Grain. Seems like a very good variety overall. In irrigated environments, it typically beats Jet by a little bit. It's got a better disease package. Only downside that I've been able to tell with Rocket compared to Jet is the test weight is a little bit lower. All right, LCS Avena is a really interesting one from Lima Grain. So yield-wise, this typically is not at the top. Typically, LCS Avena is not a top yielder. And so I haven't looked too much into it before this year. But what I've realized is it's got both a great disease package. We have not seen it get stripe rust yet. And for all the other diseases that we measure, it's typically better than middle of the pack for our variety trials, which I like. Other thing that LCS Avena has is great protein, where a lot of instances, even though it's not the highest yielding, it will have taken up more protein into its grain than a lot of the other varieties in the trial. Again, not the top yielding variety, but if you're really focused on a variety with a good disease package or a variety that's going to make a protein, LCS Avena could definitely be one to consider. I've also heard it works fairly well with forage, but we don't have any, we don't test for forage quality with wheat. LCS Imeric is another one. So this one has done very well yield-wise in Hermiston and Walla Walla. This one, compared to Jet and Rocket, the big benefit this has is resistance to soil-borne wheat mosaic virus. I believe it's the only advanced variety in our advanced hard red variety in our variety trial with that resistance. Downside, it really struggles with protein. It's typically the lowest yielding or the lowest protein variety in our trial, even though the yield's pretty good. And then one more on the hard side. So Millie is a hard white variety. Good disease package, good quality. Downside with Millie is its yield. It's not bad, but you're probably not going to be beating LCS Jet or some of those other varieties that I was talking about earlier. So LCS Millie, really this is there as an option if you're interested in growing or trying to break into that specialty market. But I don't know if it'll match up on an even playing field with, say, Jet or Rocket. All right, so before I get off, I'm just going to take a quick moment to go over our new variety trial report. So there's three big things that we've changed. First, we made some changes to the format. I personally like the shaded lines. That was recommended to me by a couple of people, and I agree that it's easier to follow things across. Second one is we've added the 4-year average. I personally like that because if a variety performed very well or very poorly 4 years ago, I think that's still relevant in making planting decisions now. And then the final addition we made is definitely the most complicated. It's this best estimate of the yield. And this uses a mixed model to compile all the data that we have available to try to assign a single number for each of these varieties. So looking through this, you'll notice that where we have 4 years of data, the best estimate for the yield is equal to the 4-year average. Similarly, if we go over to some of the varieties with only 1 year of data, we'll notice that the varieties are presented in the same rank as, or for the best estimate as they actually performed in the field. So this 8185 yielded 6 bushels above M-, and the best estimate for the yield is 6 bushels above M-. Where this best estimate really becomes powerful is trying to make an estimate for where these new varieties are going to fit in with more established varieties, which I really appreciate. I think that it does a good job at knowing whether some of these new varieties are ones to watch and really have a strong future for a specific location. All right, with that, there's a lot of people I'd like to thank. Farmer cooperators who do a lot of work to make sure that our variety trials are conducted with the best possible, best opportunity for the varieties and them to thrive. A lot of our irrigated locations are managed by farm managers who also do a great job helping to manage these locations. Cereal Extension Program crew, Daisy Rudimek and Matthew Hunt, are two permanent employees, and if you're around our variety trials, you'll likely see them anywhere from planting, spraying, and harvesting. And then we also had a great crew of student workers this summer. County extension agents are always extremely helpful for making sure that these trials are conducted in the best way possible. And then I'd like to thank the Oregon Wheat Commission for funding this work. This is primarily a recorded presentation, but if you have any questions, please feel free to contact me. My number's on my website. I'm happy to talk about varieties anytime. Thank you.